They didn't see her, didn't hear her, didn't care to remember her name. In every meeting, she was just there until one day she hit send. Everything they built came crashing down. This isn't just about a company brought to its knees. It's about a woman who found her voice in a place designed to silence her. If you believe in quiet strength, long overdue justice, and the power of truth, then this story is for you. Please like, share, and subscribe to Moments That Heal wherever. Story is a heartbeat, waiting to be heard. Now, lean in, because behind every closed door, there's someone they never thought could speak. Until she did. Sarah Lynn sat in the corner of the 34th floor boardroom, tucked between a thermostat that never worked and a watercolor painting of a lake. No one could name. She'd been in that same seat for 7 years, always early, always prepared, and always invisible. The room buzzed with the low hum of old money. Richard Wayland, CEO of Wayland-Roth Capital, stood at the head of the table like a king presiding over his loyal court. Navy suit, pinned-out tie, square jaw that hadn't smiled in years. He didn't need to smile. He had power, and that was enough. Let's get started, he said, without so much as a glance at Sarah. The room quieted instantly. All eyes turned toward Paul Madsen, VP of Acquisitions, who rose with a cocky smirk and a glossy slideshow already cued on the screen. Behind him, Sarah watched the numbers flash by: growth charts, forward earnings, blue sky projections. It was polished, it was convincing, and it was a lie. Sarah leaned forward, fingers hovering over her tablet. She'd stayed late for weeks, poring through the balance sheets. Something was off: discrepancies in Rathmore's inventory valuation. Side-channel payments with no audit trail. A pattern of withdrawals that didn't match the stated vendor history. But when she raised her hand, nobody looked her way. "I have a question about Rathmore's asset transfers," she began. "Not now." Wayland cut her off smoothly. "Let's let Paul finish his thought." His tone wasn't sharp, just final. Sarah's words evaporated. She looked around. No one met her eyes. Some scribbled notes they wouldn't read later. Others tapped quietly on phones. One junior exec actually yawned. To them, she was just the risk officer. The woman who always brought up problems when they wanted smooth pitches and bigger bonuses. After the meeting, she stood near the coffee machine, pouring lukewarm decaf into a mug that said, "Not all heroes wear capes." It was a gift from an intern who'd lasted 3 months. It's probably the only person who'd ever thanked her for catching a $2.4 million fraud attempt in Q1 of 20-1. Paul Madsen strolled past with a wink. "Next time, Sarah, try not to scare the investors before lunch." She forced a polite smile, then turned away before her face could betray her. Back in her office, a narrow glass box wedged behind the main conference hallways, Sarah booted up the internal archive system. If they wouldn't listen to her in the boardroom, she'd find another way. She'd been here before, overlooked, doubted, dismissed. But she didn't need applause. She needed the truth. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. She pulled up Rathmore's vendor history again. Still wrong. She cross-checked with archived compliance reports, buried under layers of permissions, but she had clearance. Oh, she always did. Sarah didn't cut corners. She didn't gossip. She didn't play politics. It made her forgettable and dangerous. Then she saw it, an old folder marked Charity Fund 2017 Q for internal drafts. She clicked, expecting holiday budgets or donation memos. What she found was something else. A draft email from Richard Wayland, dated December 3rd, 2017. Subject line, "Confidential legal settlement number 8842. She opened it. Her pulse skipped. Remove. All references to foundation number 8842 from the annual report. We can't afford headlines. Transfer the remainder to line 12 of the consulting expense sheet. Do it clean. Never mention this again." Sarah sat frozen. She remembered that foundation. It had been flagged by a whistleblower who was fired. 2 months later, the story never hit the press. The trail had gone cold until now. She leaned back in her chair, heart thudding. This wasn't just a smoking gun. It was the fire. But why was it still here? A draft. Never sent. Never deleted. Saved by mistake. forgotten in a sync error. Either way, it was time-stamped, IP-logged, and recoverable. And it proved that the CEO himself had ordered the cover-up of a financial misappropriation using the company's own charitable foundation. 7 years ago, Sarah knew exactly what this meant. Not just for the company, not just for Wayland, but for her. She had leverage now. Real leverage. Enough to stop the Rathmore deal. Enough to force the board to listen. Enough to take everything that had been stolen from her, not in money, but in dignity, in recognition, in voice. She didn't want revenge. She wanted her seat at the table. As the city lights blinked on, one by one outside her window, Sarah remained, seated, staring at the email. She didn't print it, didn't forward it. She just let it sit there like a coiled truth, ready to strike. Tomorrow, there would be another meeting, and this time she wouldn't be ignored. The next morning, Sarah stood in front of her closet for 13 full minutes. Her standard rotation of neutral cardigans and gray slacks suddenly felt insufficient. Not unprofessional, just invisible. The kind of wardrobe that never got remembered, which was exactly why she'd chosen it. But today wasn't about blending in. Today was about being seen. She reached for a navy dress she hadn't worn since her father's retirement party, a structured sheath with subtle shoulder pleats and a neckline that meant business. She pulled her hair back into a low twist and applied lipstick with a steadier hand than expected. In the mirror, she didn't look like someone about to light a corporate fire. She looked like someone no one saw coming. Perfect. Waylandroth's lobby gleamed like a museum glass, steel and power. But Sarah didn't stop at the espresso bar or check her messages like she usually did. She rode the elevator straight to the 34th floor, eyes forward, heels clicking with quiet determination. The executive assistants gave her double takes as she passed. One even muttered, "Wow, Sarah's early again. What else is new?" I didn't realize she had barely slept. Inside her office, she locked the door. Not out of fear. Out of precision. She opened the email again, read every line, then copied it securely to an encrypted drive, backup to the backup. Then she printed one hard copy, folded it crisply, and slid it into a plain manila envelope. Her phone buzzed. Meeting, 10 a.m., Boardroom 1, Rathmore deal finalization. Had 2 hours at 9:15, she took the stairs to the 33rd floor. Compliance and Ethics Division. It smelled like toner and paranoia. Inside, Amanda Cho was reviewing 2-inch thick binders and talking on a headset, multitasking like only someone who hated inefficiency could. Amanda was sharp, cynical, and allergic to small talk. Sarah liked her for all those reasons. Amanda looked up. Risk officer visiting ethics. Must be Tuesday. Sarah closed the door behind her. You still have clearance to old archival logs? Amanda narrowed her eyes. Since when do you ask about logs? Since now. Sarah slid the manila envelope across the desk. Amanda opened it, read the first 2 lines, and sat up straighter. Don't say it out loud. Amanda's voice dropped to a whisper. Is this real? You tell me? Amanda scanned the metadata, her fingers tapping the keys like a pianist. It's real. It's unedited. And it's from Wayland's personal draft account. This was never meant to be seen. I need to know how deep it goes, Sarah said. There's a trail. I want to follow it today. Amanda leaned back. Do you have any idea what this means? Sarah nodded slowly. That they'll finally have to hear me. Amanda didn't smile. No, it means if you move wrong, they'll bury you so deep, HR won't even know you worked here. Sarah took a breath. Then let's move carefully. Amanda stared at her for a moment longer, then opened a locked drawer, pulled out a flash drive, and said, Leave this with me. Whatever happens, don't go into that meeting alone. At 10 o'clock sharp, Sarah stepped into the boardroom. The atmosphere had changed. A catered breakfast spread lined the side table. Crystal water pitchers, fresh-cut flowers. The whole scene screamed celebration, not due diligence. Wayland stood at the head, flanked by Paul Madsen and 2 senior partners. The boardroom was full 17 people, all with titles, equity, or both. And not a single one looked at Sarah as she entered. Not yet. Paul was already halfway through his polished monologue. And as you'll see in this next projection, the Rathmore acquisition positions us ahead of schedule on our Q3 objectives. It's a perfect fit. Applause. Muted, polite, automatic. Sarah cleared her throat. Nothing. She stepped forward. Louder now, excuse me. Before we vote, Wayland interrupted. Sarah, we're not taking questions right now. She didn't stop walking. I'm not asking a question, she said. She reached the table, pulled a single printed page from her folder, and placed it directly in front of the CFO. I'm submitting evidence. A murmur rippled around the room. Wayland's smile cracked. What do you think you're doing? Sarah didn't flinch. Protecting this company from you. The CFO scanned the page in, his face blanched. Paul leaned over, trying to grab it. Is this some kind of joke? No, the CFO said slowly. It's not. Wayland's voice turned cold. Sarah, you need to step outside. But no. One else moved. The air had shifted. Sarah looked around the room. For the first time in 7 years, every eye was on her. Foundation number 8842, she said clearly. 7 years ago, this board signed off on a charity merger that never added up. I didn't have proof until now. This is your CEO ordering the deletion of financial data to hide misappropriated funds. I have copies, metadata, logs, and a backup held by internal compliance. Silence. Then the general counsel stood. I think we need to pause the vote, Richard. Wayland stepped forward, face red, voice rising. You think you can hijack a board meeting with a ghost file? This is slander. It's corporate sabotage. Sarah looked him dead in the eye. No, Richard. That's finally accountability. The boardroom emptied like a courtroom after a verdict. No one spoke to Sarah as they filed out, avoiding eye contact. Clutching legal pads like life vests, unsure whether she'd just saved the company or detonated its heart. Richard Wayland hadn't said another word. It simply stormed out, his face unreadable for the first time in years. Paul Matson had followed close behind, jaw tight and eyes dark with something she couldn't yet name: disbelief, maybe, or worse, calculation. Sarah stood alone at the table, her hand still resting on the empty chair like she was bracing herself from the aftershock. The printed email sat untouched in front of her, a single page that weighed as much as a bomb. Behind her, the city skyline blinked in the afternoon sun, completely unaware that the ground had shifted inside this glass fortress. 10 minutes later, in the hallway outside the boardroom, Amanda was already waiting. I saw the security feed, she said without preamble. That was either career suicide or a revolution, possibly both. Sarah exhaled slowly. He didn't deny it. Didn't have to, Amanda replied. He went quiet. That's worse. He didn't just pull the curtain back. He yanked the whole stage out from under him. Sarah nodded, her voice low. I need time. Before they spin this, Amanda handed her a small flash drive. This is the full audit trail you asked for, but I also dug deeper. Deeper. Amanda glanced around and lowered her voice. Foundation you mentioned, number 8842. It's connected to more than just the missing funds. There's a real estate trust tied to Rathmore Holdings, set up 3 years ago in the Caymans. Silent partner. Guess whose initials are all over it? Sarah's mouth went dry. R.W. Amanda nodded grimly. The acquisition vote today wasn't about expansion. It was a cover. If that deal had closed, Wayland would have walked away. With a separate fortune offshore and untraceable, Sarah looked away, jaw clenched, and the board would have thanked him for it. But till the SEC came knocking, Amanda added, I'd stop that vote. I didn't. Stop it, Sarah said. I paused it. There's a difference. The next morning, an email went out to all senior leadership. Subject, emergency. Executive session 2:08 a.m., attendance mandatory. By the time Sarah arrived on the 34th floor, a storm had settled over the office. Whispers skittered through the hallways like rodents. Assistants exchanged looks, but said nothing. People stepped out of her path like she was radioactive. Half the company had seen the boardroom transcript by now. The other half would hear about it before lunch. Inside the conference room, The mood was sharp, clipped. The general counsel sat at the far end, flanked by two new legal faces Sarah didn't recognize. HR had a folder thick enough to land a plane. Only Richard's chair was empty. The room waited, tense and silent, until the glass door finally opened. Wayland entered. But something was different. He wasn't wearing his usual Navy power suit. No silver tie, no Rolex, just a gray button-down. Unbuttoned at the collar, his eyes were bloodshot, but his voice was even. "I've called this session to address recent developments," he said. No apology, no acknowledgement of the accusations. Typical, he turned directly to Sarah. "Ms. Mercer, I want to begin by commending your vigilance. You've raised serious concerns. I take them seriously. The board has reviewed your submission and voted unanimously to open a formal internal inquiry." There were nods around the room, but none from Sarah. Effective immediately, Wayland continued, "I will voluntarily step back from direct oversight of the Rathmore acquisition. I've appointed Paul Madsen as acting liaison to the board for this transition period." Sarah's mouth tightened. So that was the play. Sacrifice a pawn. Delay the game. "This doesn't change what's in the file," she said. "No," Wayland said, "but it does give us time to conduct this process properly. Let the truth come out the right way." Sarah caught Amanda's eyes across the room. Both of them knew exactly what this was, a trap disguised as protocol. Later that afternoon, Sarah sat in her small office, the same office she'd had for 7 years, with the same busted chair and flickering ceiling light that no one had ever bothered to fix. She stared at her monitor, watching as the company issued a sanitized press release. "Wayland Roth takes compliance seriously. We are launching a proactive review of past financial procedures. Our CEO has stepped back temporarily out of an abundance of caution. We remain committed to our values." Her inbox pinged. A message from an unknown address. Subject: "You're not safe. Check the 2018 travel ledger. Archive 9C, no signature." Sarah's heart skipped. The 2018 travel ledger. That was the year Wayland had flown to Prague during the Foundation's fundraising week. She remembered because she had canceled her own vacation to clean up the budget inconsistencies no one wanted to hear about. She opened a private drive, entered the encryption key. Archive 9C opened, and what she found made her stomach turn. The Foundation's Prague trip had been a cover. The receipts didn't match. The itinerary didn't match. Worse, 2 board members had been on the same flight, but their expenses had been filed under different codes. There was another name she didn't recognize, and then she saw it. A $475,000 line item labeled simply, "Transfer to GBC Holdings Special Liaison Project." Sarah sat back. Her hands were trembling. This wasn't just corporate greed anymore. This was fraud. Federal level. Someone else knew it too. Sarah didn't sleep that night. She didn't even try. The glow of her laptop bathed the walls of her apartment in soft blue light. Like a midnight courtroom where every document was a witness and every discrepancy was a scream. The transfer to GBC Holdings had been buried under layers of aliases, dummy accounts, and reclassified budget lines. Someone had gone to great lengths to hide a tan to make sure no one ever connected it to the Prague trip. But what chilled her wasn't the money, it was the name she didn't recognize. Langford. It wasn't a board member, not a staffer, not a vendor on record, but the name came up again, tied to hotel receipts. A security clearance log at the private airstrip, and a brief email archived and nearly deleted tagged as, "Meeting with EL to finalize NDA. Sender Paul Madsen." The next morning, Sarah arrived at the office before sunrise. The lobby lights were still dim. The janitorial crew had just finished buffing the marble floors. She walked past them unnoticed, her badge unlocking each checkpoint as if nothing had changed. But everything had. She took the elevator alone to the 31st floor. Bypassing her office and heading straight to the records room. Her access had been limited since the inquiry started. She still had her credentials and Amanda's quiet override codes. Archive cabinet 9C was housed in the back. She opened it slowly. each drawer whispering secrets of its own. Most of the travel ledgers were paper copies meant to be digitized, but conveniently backlogged. She found the one she was looking for, 2018, Q3. Dozens of receipts, flight manifests, expense justifications. And there it was again. E. Langford. Guest accommodation, Prague Marriott, paid in cash. Sarah photographed everything. Every invoice, every discrepancy, every redacted name. Then she froze. A folded note was tucked inside one of the folders. Handwritten, it read, "This isn't just about money. It's about who walks away clean when the fire comes. If you're reading this, be careful who you trust." They don't all answer to Wayland. No signature, but the handwriting was familiar. Tight, left-leaning. Precise. Sarah blinked. It was Amanda's. She didn't confront Amanda directly, not yet. She needed more than suspicion. She needed proof and a plan. Instead, she set a trap. That afternoon, Sarah called a private conflict resolution meeting with Paul Madsen. She booked it herself, using a calendar invite that appeared innocuous. Just a budget alignment follow-up. But Amanda had access to her calendar too, and Sarah needed to know if Amanda was playing both sides. Paul arrived at exactly 2 p.m. Sharp suit, pleasant face. But his eyes carried none of the charm they used to. "Ms. Mercer," he said, nodding. Curtly. "Or should I say acting Avenger?" Sarah offered a tight smile. "I thought you might want a chance to set the record straight. After all, the vote you supported Rathmore would have put you in line for a significant bonus, especially if GBC Holdings cashed out." Paul's eyes narrowed. "You're implying something?" "No," Sarah replied. "I'm stating it." Slid a printed copy of the Prague hotel invoice across the table. Highlighted in yellow was the name, E. Langford. Paul's face didn't move. Not an inch, but his fingers tapped the armrest. Twice she caught it, the same nervous tick he had during audits. "I don't know that name," said coolly. "You booked the room," she replied. "You also signed the security manifest." "Reaching, maybe. Or maybe you're just betting I won't reach far enough." Paul stood. "Be careful, Sarah. There's a fine line between whistleblower and insubordinate. You crossed it the moment you made this personal." He turned to leave, but just before the door closed behind him, Sarah spoke. "Tell Wayland I'll be presenting a full dossier at the shareholders' summit next week." Paul paused. Just for a second. Then the door shut. That night, Amanda came. To her apartment, unannounced, uninvited, but not unwelcome. Sarah opened the door slowly. Arms crossed. "You left me a note," she said. Amanda didn't deny it. She just stepped inside and sat down. "I warned you," Amanda said quietly, "because I believed in what you were doing. I still do." "Then why the games?" Sarah asked. "Why let me think I was alone?" Amanda sighed. "Because there are more players than you know. Paul's just one of them, Wayland too. But the real danger? It's Langford. And whoever's protecting him." Sarah blinked. "He's not one of us?" Amanda shook her head. "He's not even in the company directory. He's ex-CIA, now consulting under private security firms. He launders digital footprints for execs who can't afford a paper trail." "Then why involve him in Prague?" "Because Wayland's planning something bigger than a payout," Amanda whispered. "He's building a shadow exit. He's going to disappear with every file, every asset, and every ounce of deniability he's bought." Sarah stared at her. "And you knew all this?" Amanda's voice broke slightly. "I tried to stop him once. I failed. If you fail, they won't just fire you. They'll erase you." A long silence fell. Sarah stood by the window, looking out. At the city below, lights, glass, power. "I don't care if they erase me," she said quietly. "I just want the truth to outlive me." The following Monday, Sarah entered the building through the underground garage. She had never done that before, not in her 12 years at Wayland and Crane. She wasn't paranoid. She was precise. If Amanda was right, Langford's reach didn't stop at digital paper trails. It extended to the building's physical security. And Sarah couldn't afford to be seen reviewing what she was about to uncover. The USB Amanda had given her was nondescript, no markings, no labels. Just a cold sliver of metal that could crumble giants. She inserted it into her personal laptop inside. A rarely used server room on the 22nd floor when she accessed via an outdated badge scanner. Amanda helped her override. Files unfolded like a confession, encrypted folders, bank statements, shell companies, non-disclosure agreements with signatures blurred but still legible, buried payouts to ex-employees marked voluntary separation due to illness. Except one of them was later found dead in a hotel room in Mexico under another name. But what stopped her cold was a zip file labeled Athena via video. She hesitated, then clicked. Grainy footage lit up her screen security camera angle. A conference room. Wayland sat at the head of the table. Younger, sharper. His voice confident and icy. Across from him sat a woman in tears. Her face looked familiar. It was Monica Tatha, former VP of Corporate Strategy who had abruptly resigned 3 years ago. Rumors said she'd had a breakdown, but this wasn't a breakdown. It was an ultimatum. "You don't get to walk away clean," Wayland said in the video. "You took the bonuses. You signed the papers." "I didn't know they were laundering," she cried. "Then consider this your buyout," he interrupted, tossing a manila envelope across the table. "I can't be complicit. Then you're expendable." The footage cut off. Sarah sat frozen. Her stomach turned, her pulse rising into her throat. It wasn't just money. It was blackmail, coercion, maybe even worse. Monica hadn't disappeared from Stress Sheet. Been silenced, Athena, the goddess of wisdom and war, and this file was war. By 9 a.m. Sarah stood in the boardroom, alone. The long glass table reflected the city skyline behind her like a blade of steel. Ah! Her fingers tapped the envelope she held, labeled simply, shareholder evidence. She was scheduled to present a quarterly growth report in 45 minutes, a slot no one had cared much about, one she'd always been brushed aside in. But not today. Amanda arrived first. She carried no purse, no begonly, a folded legal document in one hand and a thermos of coffee in the other. "They know?" Sarah asked quietly. Amanda nodded. "They know someone's going to speak. They just don't know who." Next came Peter Wynn, CFO. Then Georgia Lynn, head of legal. Neither met Sarah's eyes. Paul Madsen entered last, flanked by 2 assistants. And then, precisely at 9:27, CEO Wayland himself walked in, as calm as a man arriving at a photo shoot. He scanned the room. His eyes lingered on Sarah, then flicked away like she was dust on the collar of his Armani jacket. "Let's begin," he said. Sarah stood, her knees locked, her voice surprisingly steady cut through the quiet. "I won't be delivering the quarterly figures," she said. Murmurs, frowns. Wayland blinked once. "Excuse me? I'll be presenting evidence of fiduciary misconduct, corporate intimidation, and financial malfeasance spanning at least 5 fiscal years," Sarah replied. "And I'll be forwarding it to the shareholder committee as well as outside counsel's silence," until Paul scoffed. "This is absurd. You have no standing. You're not even a board member." Sarah opened the envelope. "These files speak for themselves." She passed around a printed summary, meticulously labeled, cross-referenced, bulletproof. Everything Amanda had risked to uncover. Everything Sarah had verified. Wayland remained motionless. Then, finally, he smiled. A slow, practiced smile. "Always admired your persistence," he said. "But persistence without position is ... noise." He leaned forward. "You're not the one who gets to tell this story, Ms. Mercer." Sarah returned his gaze without blinking. "Then let's put it to a vote." She said that's when Amanda stood, from her blazer pocket. She pulled out a signed affidavit. "I'm invoking Clause 1 to be of our governance bylaws," Amanda said calmly, "which grants whistleblower protection to any employee acting in defense of shareholder interests, especially when provided legal corroboration by an executive officer." Wayland's jaw twitched. "You're bluffing?" Amanda placed the document in front of him, signed Noda, witnessed by Georgia Linda, head of legal. Now looked like she'd swallowed glass. Paul lunged forward. "This is insubordination." Collusion. Amanda turned to him sharply. Sit down, Paul. Before I have your last 3 expense reports. Audited line by line. He sat. After the meeting, Sarah walked outside for the first time in what felt like months. The sky above the Manhattan skyline was soft and pale, like the story hadn't ended, only paused for breath. Amanda joined her on the plaza steps. You know this isn't over, she said. Sarah nodded. They'll fight back. They already are. Amanda handed her a phone burner style. There's someone you need to talk to, she said. Her name's Alina Langford. She's not who we thought she was. Sarah took the phone. The screen lit up. A message blinked. You've made yourself visible. Now let's see how brave you really are. The burner phone felt heavier in Sarah's coat pocket than its weight could justify. She hadn't called the number Amanda gave her. Not yet. All day, she moved through the office with the unsettling feeling of being followed, not physically, but electronically. A login she didn't recognize on her internal dashboard. An error ping while reviewing old reports. A message in her inbox that vanished before she could open it. Paranoia was a luxury Sarah had never allowed herself. Now it was survival. At 5:43 p.m., as most of the office began to empty, Sarah made her move. She rode the elevator not down to the garage, but up to the 47th floor, the executive floor, a place she rarely had cause or permission to visit. Wayland's office sat dark and locked. Behind a fingerprint scanner, but she wasn't after his desk. She turned instead toward the small, glass-enclosed lounge at the end of the hall. Spot Few knew housed a second data port hardwired into the company's oldest network infrastructure. Amanda had mentioned it in passing once, calling it the dinosaur skeleton. She slipped in quietly, plugged in the burner phone, dialed it. Rang twice, then silence. Then a click. A woman's voice, low, crisp, devoid of pleasantries. Ms. Mercer, I was wondering when you'd call. Sarah blinked. You're Alina Langford? I was. Technically, I died in 2016. It's easier to audit dead people less frequently. Sarah froze. You're Wayland's sister? Half-sister? He preferred to pretend I was a consulting error. He ran IT security for over a decade, then disappeared. Correction. I was disappeared. There was a pause. Then a hum of static. Listen carefully. They didn't just launder money. They laundered people. Hired under ghost contracts, paid through proxy firms, women, immigrants, cancer survivors, those who couldn't risk fighting back, then discarded, quietly, legally, sometimes permanently. Sarah's pulse thudded. Are you saying there were deaths? I'm saying Monica Tate was just the first to resist and survive. And she only survived because I smuggled her out. You faked her death? No. I faked her mental breakdown. Easier to disappear someone who snapped than someone who told the truth. Sarah gripped the edge of the console. What do you want from me? She asked. Not what. Who? Wayland didn't act alone. Amanda thinks she's the only executive ally you have. She's wrong. A file transferred to the burner. Phone encrypted. But labeled clearly. Gideon. Lynn_internal confessions. Sarah exhaled slowly. Gideon Lynch. Strategy officer. Publicly loyal. Quietly invisible. No scandals. No shadows. He was either the cleanest man in the company or the smartest at hiding it. Why him? Because he regrets it, Alina said. And because he's dying. The next morning, Sarah walked into Gideon's office without knocking. He didn't seem surprised. He was a tall, angular man with thinning silver hair and dark, restless eyes. Behind him, floor-to-ceiling windows showed the city already in motion. Indifferent to moral crises inside corporate glass cages. Close the door, he said, setting aside his glasses. She did. You knew I was coming, she said. He nodded. Alina contacted you? Sarah didn't confirm. She didn't have to. Gideon stood slowly. I assume you saw the video files, the contracts, the fake terminations. I did. And yet you're still here. Sarah stepped forward. I'm not here for vengeance. I'm here for justice. There's a difference. Gideon walked to a locked drawer, pulled out a manila folder and a pill bottle, set them both on the desk. The second one keeps the tumors in my lungs from growing too fast, he said. The first one is more dangerous, it's a ledger. He pushed the folder toward her. It documents who signed what, when, and why. Sarah opened it. The names hit. Like blows. Georgia Lynn, Peter Wynn, even Amanda, though? Her signature came with a footnote, witnessed under legal duress. What do you want me to do with this? Sarah asked. I want you to decide what kind of revolution this is, Gideon said. Public exposure or quiet restructuring? A bloodbath or a blueprint? That night, Sarah stared out her apartment. Window overlooking the East River. The city humming like a machine that didn't know how to sleep. She understood something now. This wasn't a single battle against a tyrant CEO. It was a war for the soul of the entire company and the stories. Of every person silenced to build it, she picked up her phone, texted Amanda, I have names. I have proof. But I also have a decision to make. Amanda replied within seconds, then make it with your whole heart. Make it count. Sarah turned back to her laptop, opened a blank document, typed the headline, The House That Lies Built, and the Woman Who refused to whisper anymore. Sarah Mercer had read the file 3 times. By now, the names bled into each other like bruises on the page executive titles. Codenamed shell corporations, timestamps meticulously falsified. But one file stood out. It had no official stamp, no internal label, just a single subject line. Cut them before they speak the sender. Stephen Wayland at RadiantHoldings.com, the recipient. Gideon Len at RadiantHoldings.com, the content. Was chilling in its simplicity. Amanda's getting sentimental again. So is Alina. If Mercer follows the same path, take action earlier this time. I'm done covering loose ends. It wasn't just strategy. It was a premeditated threat. An order. A digital fingerprint that tied Richard Wayland not only to the cover-ups, but to the silent erasure of anyone who dared to speak. Monica Tate, Alina Langford, sat motionless in her kitchen at 2:14 a.m., the screen's glow casting harsh lines on her face. Her tea had gone cold. Her shoulders were tight from hours of stillness. But her mind had never been sharper. She copied the email, encrypted it twice. Then she printed a single copy, not to expose it, to carry it. By 7:45 the next morning, Sarah was already waiting in the conference room, not her usual basement box with stale coffee and a flickering light bulb. No, this was the penthouse boardroom, the glass coliseum of power. It's the place she was never invited to until now. Amanda had scheduled the meeting under Wayland's name, urgent status review with legal and financial strategy teams. The bait was set. At 8:01 a.m. they arrived. Gideon, Amanda, Peter Wynn, the general counsel, Georgia Lynn, the VP of finance. Wayland, of course, was last. He strolled in with casual menace, suit flawless, voice honeyed. Well, what a diverse gathering of nerves and ambition. Sarah didn't flinch. She waited until everyone had taken their seat, and then she stood. I called this meeting, she said. On your behalf, Mr. Wayland. Brows lifted. Georgia stiffened. Wayland chuckled. You did? I thought it was time, she continued, that we stop pretending we're in different meetings, hearing different truths. Amanda slid a USB across the table. Peter reached for it. Sarah placed the printed email in the center of the table. I want this read aloud, she said. Word for word. Silence. Then Georgia reached out, picked up the page. Her voice didn't waver, but the air in the room did. By the final line, I'm done covering loose ends. Even Peter had paled. Wayland's expression didn't change. Not immediately then, his eyes narrowed. That email is fabricated. It's from your server, Amanda said, encrypted with your key, time-stamped with a signature used only on your terminal. You think this is enough to bring me down? Wayland asked. One email and a few emotional testimonies from women who couldn't handle pressure? He stood slowly, looming over the table. You're not revolutionaries. You're ants screaming at thunder. Sarah looked up at him, calm, composed. Certain ants built the colony you're standing in, she said. That night, Sarah sat alone on the rooftop of Amanda's apartment building. The skyline stretched like a tapestry stitched by power and ambition. Her phone buzzed. A new message from Elena Langford. I watched the meeting. You did well, Sarah typed back. It's not over, no, but it's begun. She put her phone away and looked at the flash drive in her palm. It contained the full recording of the boardroom meeting, the email, the silence. The moment the truth shattered the illusion, Amanda had already sent a secure copy to an investigative journalist who owed her a favor from years ago. Another copy was headed to the Department of Labor. Sarah wasn't waiting for justice anymore. She was delivering it not with rage, but with precision, not with fire, but with light. She closed her eyes, feeling for the first time in years that her voice or truth hadn't just echoed into the void, it had landed, and it had changed the air. 2 days after the boardroom revelation, Sarah Mercer stepped off the elevator into a different world. Gone were the polite greetings, the nods of cautious admiration. Now, heads turned away. Conversations halted mid-sentence. Even the janitor. She always smiled that avoided her eyes. The silence was no longer dismissive. It was strategic, Amanda warned her. Don't mistake the applause for alliance, she'd said. People will cheer truth, right up until it costs them their bonus. Sarah kept walking. She was scheduled to present a transparency overhaul to the executive committee that Morning Ann initiative Amanda had long advocated for, now hastily resurrected in the wake of the email leak. Out. But something in the air told her she wouldn't be presenting anything at 9:02 a.m. Her phone buzzed. From HR Legal, please report to Conference 3B. Mandatory compliance review. Sarah frowned. That wasn't on her calendar. She texted Amanda. No response. Her heels echoed down the empty corridor toward 3B. The door was already ajar. Inside sat 3 people she had never seen before. 2 men in navy suits and a woman with a sleek bob and unreadable expression. Sarah Mercer, the woman asked. Yes, please sit. This is an internal inquiry regarding violations of data handling protocol and breach of confidentiality. Under Clause 17B of your employment contract, Sarah blinked. You're accusing me of misconduct? We're conducting a review, the man on the left said, sliding a folder across to her. It's come to our attention that you accessed private executive communications using an unauthorized credential path. Sarah opened the folder. It was her own activity logs, lectively cut, meticulously framed. They're accusing me of hacking, she said quietly. No one's used that word, the woman replied, her tone bone-dry. But depending on what's found, prosecution isn't off the table. Sarah closed the folder. Who filed this complaint? That information is privileged. Of course it was. Sarah stood, her voice calm. I'll need representation. You're on administrative leave pending outcome. Please surrender your badge and company devices. By noon, it was everywhere. Not the email, but the spin. A viral tweet read, Breaking Radiant.
Holdings.
Staffer illegally accessed CEO's private correspondence. Sources say she's emotionally unstable and had personal issues with leadership. Sarah sat in Amanda's kitchen, phone in hand, pulse hammering. Every outlet had picked it up. Wayland's damage control team was working overtime, turning the narrative with surgical precision. I told you he'd fight dirty, Amanda muttered, pacing. But going after your mental health? That's new, even for him. Sarah exhaled shakily. They're building a character assassination. They'll dig through everything, my medical records, my divorce files, even my therapy notes if they can find a loophole. Amanda paused. Then we go louder. Yes. Sarah looked up. Public press conference live. We take the email. The boardroom. Footage. We put it all out there. Sarah hesitated. I didn't come here to be famous, Amanda. You didn't. You came to tell the truth. But the truth doesn't always survive in whispers. That night, Sarah sat alone in her apartment. A storm raged outside, thunder crashing like it was mocking her heartbeat. On her kitchen table lay a manila envelope. Inside, a printed screenshot, an internal message chain. Time stamped 3 months prior. Between Gideon Lin and 2 senior engineers, Mercer's reporting flagged the illegal severance structure. Shut it down quietly, or she put the whole model at risk. If she pushes it, I'll raise questions about her last leave of absence. Pretty sure she saw someone for stress. That'll do the trick. Classic overachiever breakdown. Happens all the time. Her hand trembled. It wasn't just spin. It was planned, preemptive, cold, calculated, and everyone had known. Her tears came slowly hot, quiet, dignified, not out of self-pity, but out of recognition. This wasn't just her story. It was every woman's story who had ever walked into a room prepared and left feeling invisible. Every voice labeled emotional. Every truth buried under a polished executive statement. But now, Sarah had something none of them had. An audience and a choice. She stood, reached for her laptop, and opened a new draft. Subject: to everyone who ever sat in a meeting and wasn't heard. The glass doors of the Radiant Holdings boardroom had never opened for someone like Sarah Mercer. But this morning, they did no fanfare, no guards, just the cold hum of fluorescent lights and a semicircle of power beginning to fracture. She entered. In a navy blazer, her late father's wristwatch ticking quietly beneath the cuff. Her hair was pulled back in a simple knot. No makeup, no mask, just resolve. At the far end of the table sat Gideon Lin. Still the CEO technically, though the power he once wielded had become something brittle, decorative, like an ancient sword. Hung too long on the wall, beside him were the board members, some pale, some unreadable, a few sheepishly scrolling their phones. And at the head of the table was Elaine Kapoor, interim chairwoman of the Ethics Committee, her expression sharp as winter glass. Sarah didn't sit. She placed a manila folder on the center of the table. Side were copies of every leaked document. Every timestamp, every cross-referenced lie. "I'm not here to negotiate," she said. "I'm here to finalize." Kapoor nodded slowly. "We've reviewed your claims. The external audit confirms them." Gideon flinched barely, but Sarah saw it. "You're not pressing charges," he snapped. "No," Kapoor replied, her tone flat. "You'll resign, effective immediately. And in return, you don't go to jail." Gideon's jaw locked, but the war was over. The air told him. The silence told him. The eyes around the table, once deferent, now distant, he pushed his chair back, stood, and walked out, low and heavy like an old general descending from a broken throne. Sarah didn't watch him go. She turned instead to Kapoor. "That's not the end." "No," Kapoor agreed. "That's just the first stone removed." In the weeks that followed, Radiant Holdings did not collapse. It evolved. A new task force was formed. Diversity and ethics became core branches, not decorative statements. The whisper networks, the ones that had once trafficked in fear now, flowed with opportunity, and in the center of it all, Sarah sat not on a throne, but on a plain bench inside a sunlit meeting room with no plaques, no VIP chairs. Just space, air, voice. She wasn't promoted. She didn't want to be instead. She helped draft new hiring policies, mentored overlooked staff, worked quietly to ensure the system no longer spun like a wheel chewing its own spokes. One afternoon, as she packed up for the day, Amanda stopped by. "They're asking if you'll speak at the conference," Amanda said. "Keynote Boston." Sarah looked up. "About what?" "About what happens when a woman tells the truth in a room built to ignore her." Sarah smiled. "Tell them no," Amanda blinked. "Tell them I'm busy training the next woman. She can give the keynote." Months passed. One rainy Tuesday, Sarah returned to the rooftop terrace of Radiant's headquarters, once a vanity space for board parties. Now a quiet garden open to all staff. She found Elijah there. The intern, who once brought her coffee with too many sugars and an apology in his eyes, now he wore a badge marked data analyst. "You earned that?" she asked. He nodded. "Your report helped. The new VP actually read my portfolio." Sat beside him on the bench. Truth ripples, she said, even when the stone sinks. He looked at her. I still don't understand how you didn't break. She smiled. I did. But I broke in a direction. That night. Sarah walked home under streetlights flickering like thoughts. No cameras followed, no headlines screamed, but somewhere behind a conference door, a woman cleared her throat and spoke without shrinking. Somewhere in a boardroom, a man of color stood and wasn't interrupted. And somewhere in a small Midwestern city, an older woman applied for a job she'd been told she was too late for, all because one voice echoed loud enough to leave a crack in the walls, not to bring the ceiling down, but to let the light in. If this story touched you, share it. For every voice that's still waiting to be heard, before you go, we'd love to hear from you. Where in the world are you watching from? And have you ever felt like your voice was ignored till it truly mattered? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your story might just inspire someone else today if this tale moved you, helped you see something differently, or simply warmed your heart. Please consider subscribing to Heartlight Stories. We share powerful emotional stories each week, stories that heal, uplift, and remind us all that it's never too late to rise. Thank you for spending time with us. We're honored to have you here. Until next time, take care and keep your light burning. The press conference was set for 10 a.m. by 9:12. The stream had over 150,000 waiting. Amanda sat in the corner of the modest rented studio, checking the mic levels, while Sarah stared into the camera lens with the unshakable stillness of someone who had already walked through fire. The white backdrop behind her was blank. No logos, no PR glitz, just light and silence. This isn't a takedown, Sarah had said the night before. It's a release. Amanda nodded, but she knew better. The truth wasn't neutral. Not anymore. At 9:59, the red light blinked on, and Sarah began. Good morning, my name is Sarah Mercer. I was an executive analyst at Radiant Holdings until 48 hours ago, when I was suspended for allegedly breaching confidential data protocols. I'm here to tell you that those allegations are not only false, they are part of a calculated cover-up to protect men in power who have silenced voices, manipulated systems, and destroyed careers for decades. And I have the receipts. She clicked the remote in her hand. On the split screen, an email appeared. It's the same one that began everything. Then another. A timeline of internal discussions, budget concealments, and retaliation strategies all printed, watermarked, corroborated. Her voice remained calm, precise, deadly. I want to be clear. I didn't leak these to destroy a company. I exposed them because truth is not a liability. I spent years in rooms where no one heard me. Not because I was wrong, but because I wasn't one of them. To every woman who's ever been told she's too emotional, every immigrant who's had to prove twice as much for half the recognition, every older employee quietly edged out for not keeping up the energy, I see you, and I'm not going to whisper anymore. The chat exploded. She's fearless. This is what leadership looks like. I've been in that room. I am her. Within 20 minutes, major outlets were live reacting. Hashtags trended globally. Hash is up. Port Sarah hashtag, hear her now. Hashtag Radiant Licks. But what hit hardest wasn't the documents. It was her final line. You cannot fire someone into silence. You cannot erase what we remember. And you cannot win a war with locked doors when the truth is already standing outside. She stood, removed the mic herself, and walked off camera. At Radiant headquarters, chaos unfolded in real time. Gideon Lin sat in his private office, blinds drawn, watching the live stream with a face carved in glass. The general counsel, Deborah Weems, stood behind him, pale. She named dates, documents. It's irrefutable, Deborah said quietly. Who let her access that footage? Gideon muttered. Does it matter? She shot back. You left a trail and she followed it better than any pie. He turned slowly in his chair. Then we bury her, he whispered. But the room had shifted. So had the world. Outside calls were already pouring in from the board. Investors, journalists, regulators, and somewhere down the hall, someone was printing. A resignation letter, not Sarah's. That evening, Sarah's voicemail filled up with strangers. A black woman from Atlanta. They pushed me out of a non-profit board last year. You just gave me my voice back. A retired manager from Texas. Spent 25 years building a team. They replaced me with someone half my age. I cried during your speech. A man from New Jersey. I always thought I was the problem. I never realized the room was designed to ignore me. Sarah sat at Amanda's kitchen table, the same one where she once trembled under threat of legal ruin. Now her hands were steady, her eyes clear, but her phone kept buzzing. Unknown number, she picked up. Sarah Mercer. The voice said, male, cold. Yes, this is Gideon Lynn. I suggest we meet. She didn't flinch. Why? Because you think this is over? She paused, then smiled. No, Mr. Lynn, I know it's not. She hung up, then turned to Amanda. He wants to negotiate. Amanda raised an eyebrow. That means he's scared. Sarah nodded. Close to what? Close to what? Sarah looked at her. To a door that doesn't shut anymore.